The hallway was cold and dark as Captain Jace Walker walked past the guards with his hands in his pockets. He had seen many strange things in this war, but this was different. They called it a weapon, a monster, something captured from the enemy. But the way the guards avoided, even looking at the cell, made his skin crawl. "Don't go near it, sir," one of the guards warned without making eye contact. "She's dangerous," another added. Tightening his grip on his rifle, Jace didn't answer, just kept walking, boots echoing softly against the metal floor. The door at the end had a red light blinking above it and thick steel locks all around it. They called the creature inside Unit V9, but Jace had heard whispers it used to be a girl. He pressed his face to the small glass window and peered inside. The room was dim, the walls scratched and dented, chains hanging from the ceiling, and in the corner, curled up like an abandoned child, was something not quite human. Her arms were covered in hardened scales, her back had ridges like armor, but her face, it was not angry, not wild. It looked tired and sad, like someone who had cried too long and had no tears left. Then it happened. She looked up. Her glowing yellow eyes met his, and for a second, Jace felt something deep inside. Not fear, not disgust, but connection. She wasn't snarling, she wasn't growling, she was just watching him. "Step away from the door, Captain," came a voice from behind. It was Lieutenant Griggs, the one in charge of this section. "You're not allowed to interact with that thing," Griggs said, frowning hard. Jace didn't reply, just gave a slow nod and walked away. But his mind stayed behind, stuck on those eyes. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her, about it, as everyone else said. But no monster looked at you like that. No monster curled up in a corner like it was ashamed of itself. The next morning, he returned alone, carrying a tray with food and water. The guards looked confused but didn't stop him. Maybe they thought it was a test. Or maybe they didn't care anymore. Jace opened the small hatch in the door and slid the tray inside. He waited, heart pounding, but she didn't move then. Slowly, her hand reached out from the shadows. Her fingers looked sharp, clawed almost, but they trembled. She grabbed the food and pulled it back quietly, like she didn't want to be seen. She didn't growl, didn't roar. She just sat and ate silently, like a prisoner, not a beast. The next day, he came again. This time, she was already waiting by the door. When he opened the hatch, she didn't touch the food. Instead, she leaned close to the small gap and whispered, "My name, Lyra." Jace froze. She had spoken. A monster wasn't supposed to speak. He looked at her through the tiny slot and saw her lips trembling, her eyes afraid. "My name is Lyra," she said again, her voice low and soft, almost like a child's. "Why are you telling me this?" Jace asked, unsure if he should even be talking. "Because you looked at me," she said, her eyes never leaving his. "Everyone else sees a monster," she whispered. "But you looked like you saw me." Jace stepped back, heart racing. He didn't know what this was, but he knew it wasn't right. This wasn't some bloodthirsty creature. They had locked up a girl. A girl turned into something else, something twisted. He went straight to Dr. Mira Solon, the base's lead scientist. "I need to know what V9 really is," he demanded. Mira frowned. "It's a living weapon, a hybrid created by the enemy. But what was she before?" Jace asked, voice sharp. Mira hesitated, then finally said, "She was just a girl. One of many they transformed against their will." Jace felt cold all over. He had seen too many horrible things during this war. But this was different. This was cruelty hidden under the name of strategy. That night, he returned again. This time, he didn't bring food. He sat down outside the cell, back against the wall, and whispered, "I'm here, Lyra," from inside the cell. Her voice replied quietly, "I know." And for the first time since the war began, Jace felt something strange. Not hope, not peace, but the beginning of something deeper, something dangerous, and yet somehow beautiful, because what he had seen behind that glass wasn't a monster. It was a soul still fighting to stay alive inside a broken shell. And Jace had just made the worst or maybe the best decision of his life. The guards had started whispering behind Jace's back. They noticed he kept returning to the restricted chamber. But no one dared question him, not out loud. He was a war hero, a squad leader, a human who had survived battles others couldn't even imagine. But even heroes could get curious, and curiosity in wartime was a dangerous thing. Jace stood outside her cell again, this time longer than before. He didn't knock, didn't speak. He just stared through the glass until her face slowly appeared in the shadows. Her eyes met his without fear now, only quiet recognition. She didn't growl or hide. She just whispered softly, "I remember trees." That one sentence hit him harder than a gunshot. "I used to climb them," she said, "before they changed me." Her voice cracked at the end, and she turned away quickly. Jace didn't know what to say. He wasn't trained for this. He could fix a broken weapon, fight 100 enemies, take a bullet, but he couldn't fix her sadness that night. Jace broke protocol again. He stole a datapad from the research lab and accessed her classified file. Name, Lyra Velsari. Age at transformation, 17 cycles. Subject type, Forced Combat Evolution Unit, V9. Her photo showed a young alien girl with silver hair, soft features, and bright hopeful eyes. The same eyes now trapped behind a mutated face and scarred flesh. Jace's stomach twisted. She had a name, a life, a family, maybe even dreams before they stole it all from her. The next day, he brought something different, paper and a pen. When he slid them through the hatch, she looked confused. "What is this?" she asked in her shaky voice. "I thought maybe you'd want to draw," Jace said, shrugging. Pretending it wasn't a big deal, she took the pen slowly, like it might burn her. And for the next few minutes, she just stared at the blank page. Then she began to move her hand, carefully, quietly. Jace sat down outside the door and waited. When she was done, she held up the page against the glass. It was a drawing of a child sitting under a tall tree, smiling. Jace felt something burn in his chest. It wasn't just a memory. It was her trying to be someone again. But the moment didn't last that night. Alarms blared across the base. Security bots ran past him, weapons ready. He sprinted toward her cell, heart hammering in his chest. They had triggered her again, activated the implant inside her brain. When he arrived, her cell was filled with smoke and sparks. She was roaring, her body twisted and glowing with unnatural strength. Guards shouted, guns aimed. "Stand down, she's in berserker mode." Jace shoved past them, ignoring the warnings. "Lyra!" he shouted through the thick glass. "Look at me. You're not a monster, you're not." She froze, her eyes wide, body trembling. Then her claws dropped to her sides and she backed into the corner like a frightened child. The guards didn't understand. They were ready to kill her, call her a threat, lock her away forever. But Jace saw it now, clear as day, her humanity, her pain, her strength. He turned to the officers and shouted, "She's not the weapon, the implant is. You're making her into this." But no one listened. They only saw what they were told to see, a creature, a danger, a failed experiment. Later, alone in his quarters, Jace stared at the drawing she had made. His hands trembled as he remembered her voice. "I remember trees." And he made a choice that night, not as a soldier, not as a leader, but as a human being. He would not leave her in that cage, even if it meant turning against his own side. Because if no one else saw who she really was, then he would. He would be her proof that she was more than what they made her, more than her claws, her scales, her programming. She was Lyra, and she had finally found someone who said her name, not her number. The war hadn't broken her yet. But now, for the first time, it had given her something else. Someone who believed she was still worth saving. The scream didn't sound like it came from a living creature. It tore through the silence of the base like metal ripping apart. Jace dropped the cup in his hand as alarms flashed red overhead. He knew that sound, he had heard it once before. Only this time, it was louder, closer, and filled with more pain than fury. He ran, boots pounding against steel floors, ignoring the shouts behind him. He pushed past confused soldiers and stunned technicians until he reached the security wing. The door to Lyra's chamber was sealed shut, but it was shaking from the inside. Sparks flew from the corners as the power grid struggled to hold her in. Inside, something was smashing the walls with brutal force. And then he saw it on the screen, her face twisted, her mouth open in agony, not rage. "She's been triggered," Mira said, rushing in beside him. "They activated the implant," she whispered, her hands trembling. "Who did it?" Jace snapped, fury in his voice. "I don't know," she said. "But she's in pain, Jace. Not just dangerous, she's fighting herself." On the monitors, Lyra's body had changed again. Her claws had grown longer, sharper, her back was arched unnaturally. But her eyes, those eyes still had fear in them, not hate. She was slamming herself into the walls, as if trying to break free from her own body. Jace made his decision. "Open the door," he said. "Are you insane?" Mira gasped. "She'd tear you apart." "No," he said. "She won't." Inside the cell, the air was heavy with heat and static. Lyra was panting, her chest rising fast, her hands clawing at her head. "No," she kept repeating. "Stop, I don't want." Jay stepped in slowly, arms at his sides. "It's me," he said gently. "Lyra, it's Jace. Look at me." She turned toward him, face twisted in pain, claws shaking in the air. "Get out," she choked. "I can't." "Control it, I'll hurt you." "No," he said again, not moving. "You're not a weapon, not to me." She took a step forward. Then another, her body glitching between human and beast. The implant in her skull flashed red behind her ear, pulsing like a ticking bomb. Suddenly, her claws shot out and scraped across the wall next to his face. But he didn't flinch, he just looked at her with steady eyes, and for one long moment, she froze, trembling like a child on the edge of breaking. "I don't want to be this," she whispered, voice raw. "I know," he said. "Then don't. Fight me, fight it." Her eyes blinked rapidly as her breathing slowed. She dropped to her knees, claws digging into the floor, growling, screaming, resisting. The implant pulsed faster until suddenly it stopped. The red light blinked out and the air went quiet. She collapsed forward, her body smoking slightly from the inside. Jace caught her before she hit the floor, his arms wrapped around her trembling frame. "You're okay," he whispered. "You did it." But she didn't answer, only whispered one thing before passing out. "Thank you for seeing me." Later, in the med bay, Mira stood beside her sleeping form. "She forced the system into shutdown," Mira said, voice low and stunned. "No one has ever done that before." "She's not like the others," Jace replied. "She's stronger than any of us." Mira shook her head, confused and amazed. "We have to remove the implant before someone tries again," she said, "but we'll need tools we don't have here." "I'll get them," Jace said firmly. He wasn't going to let anyone use her again, not as a weapon, not as a test subject, not as a monster, but what he didn't know was that someone was watching from a distant command center. A figure in shadow watched the footage with cold eyes. "She's resisting the programming." The voice said into a unit. "Prepare the others." The screen zoomed in on Lyra's sleeping face. "If one can break the system, the others will follow." And in that moment, the war changed, not with guns or ships, but because one girl, once forced to become a beast, had chosen to be something more, something terrifying, something beautiful, something free. And the only one who truly saw it was the human who refused to let go of her hand. Asterisk. They whispered her name like it was a secret they weren't supposed to know. Not V9, not the weapon, not the beast, just Lyra. And the more people said it, the more real she became again. But names couldn't erase what had been done, even as her claws slowly faded and her skin became soft again. The scars beneath never disappeared. Jace sat beside her bed in the med bay. Watching her sleep, she looked peaceful now, but her breathing was shallow, her body weak. He had seen soldiers come back from battle looking better than this, not from wounds, but from what they were forced to become. She's stable for now, Mira said quietly, entering the room. But the implant's still inside her brain. Jace nodded. Then we take it out. Mira frowned. We don't have the tech here, not without alerting command. Then we do it in the dark, Jace said, voice steady. Just like they did when they put it in. Later that night, Mira moved her equipment quietly into a hidden lab beneath the base. Only a few trusted people knew it existed. The place had once been used to hide failed projects, broken bots, dead hopes. Now it would be used to save something still alive. When Lyra woke up, she didn't speak at first. Her fingers moved slowly, touching the side of her head, feeling the heat from the implant. Jace stood close, his hands shaking just enough for her to notice. You're scared, she said softly. Not of you, he replied. Of what they'll do if they find out. She nodded slowly. I can feel it pulsing, she whispered, like it's waiting to take me again. Then we don't give it the chance, Jay said. We kill it before it kills you. Inside the lab, Mira prepped the tools while Lyra lay still on the table. The light above flickered like it was afraid too. You don't have to do this, Jay said, one last time. Lyra looked at him with those same eyes, the ones he had seen through the glass. I do, she whispered, because if I don't, I'll never really be free. The surgery was not clean, not quick, not safe. Mira worked with hands that hadn't done this kind of operation in years. Every second, the implant fought back, sending pulses through Lyra's nerves, making her cry out. Jace held her hand the whole time, whispering her name over and over, like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. Lyra, stay with me. Lyra, you're almost there. Lyra, you're not a monster. Finally, with a hiss and a spark, the implant cracked open. Mira yanked it out with a tool that sparked in her fingers. The small device, still blinking faintly, landed on the tray with a metallic clink, and in that moment, Lyra exhaled not just from the pain, but from the years of silence that had been forced into her mind. I can't hear it anymore, she whispered, almost like she didn't believe it. It's gone. But the silence didn't last long. Jace's cum buzzed with a sharp code and emergency alert. He looked at Mira with wide eyes. They know, he said. Someone knows what we did. Within minutes, soldiers were sweeping the base, looking for Lyra, looking for the missing implant. Jace moved fast, lifting Lyra in his arms. Her strength still not fully returned. Mira led them through tunnels beneath the base, old cargo routes no one used anymore. Where are we going? Lyra asked weakly, her voice shaking. Someplace they won't find you, Jace said. Someplace you can breathe without chains. Outside, the stars were brighter than she remembered. The air was colder, the world bigger. They had escaped for now, but Lyra knew deep down the war wasn't over. Not for her, because she wasn't the only one. There were others like her still out there, still caged, still controlled, still whispering inside their own minds, hoping someone would hear. And now, for the first time, someone had. She leaned against Jace's shoulder, her body trembling not from pain, but from something else, something she hadn't felt in years. Freedom. But freedom always had a price, and soon, they'd both have to face it. The stars above them looked peaceful, but Jace knew they were being hunted. He felt it in his chest, the way the silence around them didn't feel calm. It felt like a storm that had paused to take a breath. Lyra sat in the corner of the stolen dropship, hugging her knees, eyes scanning the empty sky through the window. She looked human again, almost, but her silence told him the monster they forced her to become still whispered from time to time. We can't outrun them forever, Jace said, hands tight on the controls. But maybe we can outrun them long enough to make a difference. Lyra didn't answer at first, just stared ahead like she was watching something only she could see. When they catch us, she whispered, they'll try to use me again. They won't, Jace said firmly, because they'll have to go through me first. Behind them, The sky lit up with chasing lights, 2 ships close in fast. They had found them, sooner than expected. Jace flipped switches and dove toward the clouds of a nearby moon. The ship rattled and shook as heat built up around the hull. Lyra gripped the seat but didn't scream. Her eyes glowed faintly now, her instincts waking. Jace dodged a blast just in time as a missile shot past their wing. The ship's warning systems beeped wildly. "We're not gonna make it like this," he muttered. "I can help," Lyra said suddenly, her voice cold and sharp. "No," Jace barked. "You just got the implant out. Don't force it." "I'm not forcing it," she said. "I'm choosing it this time." She walked toward the ship's rear bay and opened the panel to the outer door. "What are you doing?" he shouted. She turned and gave him a strange smile, not cruel, not sad, just tired. "I'm going to show them that this monster has teeth and memory." Before he could stop her, she launched herself out into the wind, body twisting mid-air. As her arms reshaped into deadly armor, for the first time, she chose to become the thing they built, but only to protect. Jace could only watch from the cockpit as one of the enemy ships burst into flames. Lyra moved like thunder in the air, faster than any drone, stronger than any bot. She ripped the second ship open with her bare hands, then vanished back into the clouds. Seconds later, she landed back on the dropship, smoke rising from her arms, her breathing heavy but controlled. "Next time, I'll need shoes," she muttered, and fell into the passenger seat, smiling weakly. Jace laughed, not because it was funny, but because it meant she was still herself. Even with claws, with glowing skin, with wings that had started to grow from her back, she was still Lyra, and she had just saved them both. Later, as they hid in a mountain cave on the moon, Jace built a fire and stared into it. Lyra sat beside him, watching the flames as if remembering something from before. "I wasn't supposed to survive the change," she said quietly. "They made us in batches. I was number 9, the others." Her voice faded. Jace didn't ask, he just waited. And eventually she continued. "Most of them went mad, some begged to be ended. I didn't scream when they changed me," she said, her voice like ice. "I just disappeared inside myself." Jace reached over and gently placed a hand over hers. "You're back now," he said. "And you're not alone." She didn't pull away, for the first time. She leaned closer to the fire, letting its warmth touch her skin. Even monsters feel cold, he thought. Even monsters deserve fire and safety. But deep underground, on a world far away, something darker was rising. General Creighton stared at the burning wreckage of his ships on the holoscreen. "She's still alive," he growled, "and she's learning to like it." He turned to a black chamber behind him, where other figures floated in glass tanks. "Wake the others," he ordered. "If Lyra chooses to fight for the humans, then let her see what she turned her back on." Jace didn't know it yet. Lyra didn't feel it yet. But war wasn't chasing them anymore, it was following their scent. Step by step, and soon, their hiding place would no longer be a place of safety. It would become a battlefield, because when one monster breaks free, the others want to know how she did it, and not all of them want to be saved. Asterisk, the dreams came. Louder now, even when she was awake. Voices whispering in a language her mouth had forgotten, but her bones remembered. Lyra stood alone at the edge of the cave, looking up at the stars like they were calling her back. She no longer needed sleep, not like before, but when she closed her eyes, she could feel them, the others, the ones still trapped. Jace walked up behind her, wrapping a thermal blanket over her shoulders. "You haven't said a word in hours," he said softly. "I've been listening," she whispered, eyes still fixed on the sky. "Listening to what?" he asked. "To what they never let me hear before," she said. "The voices of the ones they erased." Mara's voice came through the cum just then. "I found something," she said urgently. "Coordinates off-grid old research site. Deep in the asteroid belt." Jace exchanged a glance with Lyra. "They used to test on hybrids there," Mira continued. "I think you'll find answers, maybe survivors." They left that same night in a stolen scout ship, quiet and fast. The asteroid belt was dead silent, no signals, no signs of life, just floating rocks and forgotten debris. But Lyra kept pointing them forward, even when there was nothing on radar. She didn't need maps anymore. Her body remembered the pain of the place, like a scar guiding her hand. When they reached it, the site looked like a tomb, black metal towers buried into stone, no lights, no guards, no power, only silence. They entered through a broken hatch, the air stale and frozen. The walls were covered in old blood, scratches, and symbols that looked like writing, desperate writing. Jace read one out loud, barely visible under the dust. They made us forget our names. Lyra touched the wall gently. Her claws retracted as she pressed her forehead against the cold metal. I was here, she said softly. This is where they finished me. Where I stopped being a girl. They moved deeper inside, following flickering energy signals. Mira's drone floated beside them, scanning for life or data. Suddenly, a light blinked red from beneath the floor. Jace knelt and pulled open. A rusted hatch inside was a stasis pod, still active, still humming. Inside it floated a young alien boy, with glowing lines across his skin and chains around his arms. He looked just like Lyra had once looked, half human, half nightmare. He's still alive, Jace whispered, stunned. Lyra stared down at him, tears forming in her eyes. They kept him in sleep, so he wouldn't resist, she said. Just like they wanted to do to me. They activated the pod's emergency release, and slowly the chamber opened with a hiss. The boy coughed, gasping for air, eyes wild and frightened. Lyra knelt beside him and whispered in a gentle tone, "You're not alone anymore." But the boy's body suddenly twitched violently, his eyes turned black, and his hands turned into claws. The implant inside him had activated. Before Jace could react, Lyra lunged and pinned the boy down, holding his arms firmly. "Don't fight it," she said. "Listen to my voice. You don't have to obey, just listen." The boy roared and thrashed, but her voice never shook. "You are more than what they made you." Slowly, the boy's breathing slowed, his eyes returned to normal. He collapsed into her arms, weeping. "They told me I would kill if I woke up," he whispered. "They made me believe it." "They lied," Lyra said, holding him tightly. "And I'm going to help you remember who you were before." Behind them, Mira's drone beeped loudly, pulling up a data file just decrypted from the lab's core. Jace looked at the screen, and what he saw made his blood run cold. There weren't just 10 hybrids like Lyra, there were over 100, stored across secret facilities in deep space, frozen and waiting. Some were already awake and some had already gone rogue. General Creighton's voice echoed from a recording. "Monsters make better soldiers than men," he said, "and if one breaks the leash, the others will tear apart everything in their path to be free." Jace looked at Lyra, then at the boy, and felt the weight of what was coming. "They're waking up," he whispered, "and they don't have you to guide them." Lyra stood slowly, fire building in her eyes. "Then we'll find them," she said. "And this time, we won't let them forget their names." Outside the dead station, the stars blinked coldly, unaware of the storm rising among them. But deep in the blackness of space, minds once silenced were stirring. Some would want peace, others would want revenge. And only one girl who had survived it all could stop the galaxy from burning, not with war, but with memory. The boy had a name now. He whispered it one night under a dying star. As Lyra held his hand, "Ren," he said softly. "My name was Ren," and she smiled through tears. Because remembering a name meant the monster was losing its grip. They had found 3 others since then. One girl whose scream could crack metal. One boy whose eyes never blinked, even in sleep. And one who spoke only in numbers, counting something no one could see. Each one broken in a different way, each one still carrying pieces of who they used to be. Lyra didn't try to fix them. She just sat with them, spoke their names, and waited for the light to return to their eyes. But time was running out. The last coordinates had been found. The final chamber where Creighton kept his oldest creation, the first of them all. They called her Unit 0, the prototype, the origin of their suffering, and she was waking up. Jace landed the ship on a black mountain that didn't belong to any planet. It was a floating fortress built on the edge of a collapsing star. No armies, no fleets, no broadcasts, only one signal, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lyra stepped out first, her cloak trailing behind her. Her body no longer looked human or alien or machine. She was something new now. Something that had chosen its shape with her own will. Inside, the hall was empty but humming. At the center was a single glass pillar filled with red mist. A figure floated inside, her body long and perfect, her face covered in metal, but the moment Lyra stepped forward, her eyes opened, two burning orbs of violet. So, the voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. The failed daughter returns. Lyra didn't flinch. "I'm not your daughter," she said, voice calm. "I'm their sister." The glass opened, and Unit 0 stepped down like a queen returning to her court. She looked like Lyra, but untouched by pain, untouched by love. "I was made to lead," she said. "Not cry, not feel. I watched all of you break one by one. I never needed a name. That's why you lost it," Lyra said, stepping closer. "You were never given one, so you couldn't lose it, but that doesn't make you strong. It just means no one ever tried to save you." Zero's hands glowed with energy as she raised them high. The room cracked with pressure, air collapsing like glass. Jace reached for his weapon, but Lyra lifted her hand to stop him. "This isn't a war," she said. "Not anymore." Zero screamed and launched forward, claws raised, but Lyra didn't move. She caught her mid-air, held her close, and whispered something no one else could hear. And suddenly, the light in Zero's eyes flickered. She froze, trembling, her claws falling away. Then she collapsed in Lyra's arms like a child waking. "From a nightmare, I remembered," she said, barely able to speak. "There was a song once, a name. I think it was mine." Lyra held her tightly, whispering back, "Then we'll find it together." Behind them, the other hybrids appeared, one by one. Not to fight, not this time, but to stand with her. They weren't monsters, not anymore. They were survivors with names, faces, and hearts that still beat even after everything. Jace watched in silence, his chest heavy with something like awe. He had come to destroy a weapon and found a family instead. He had believed in one girl, and she had turned that belief into something greater than war, into unity, into healing, into peace. As they left the fortress, the collapsing star behind them grew quiet, like it too had waited to rest. The war wasn't over across the stars, but something far worse had ended that day. The silence, the forgetting, the chains inside the mind, those were broken now, and Lyra, once called a monster, once locked in a cage, walked freely into the light with the others behind her, not as a weapon, but as the first to remember who she really was, and the last to forget who she used to be.